My beloved child. Before you continue, pause your wandering thoughts for a moment. There is something in this message that was meant to reach you exactly now. Not yesterday. Not tomorrow. Now. Because while you have been wondering what is happening behind closed doors, while you have been questioning why certain things have felt delayed, uncertain, and strangely silent, a decision has been forming in places your eyes could not see. And tonight, heaven speaks through a story that carries a message your heart has been waiting to hear. Listen carefully. Because this is not where the story begins. The story began on a quiet evening when someone spoke your name in a room you have never entered. Your soulmate was not there at first. The conversation was not planned. No announcement was made. No grand event was taking place. Yet something unexpected happened. Your name surfaced. At first it was only a passing mention. A simple reference. A brief moment. But sometimes the smallest spark becomes the beginning of a fire that changes everything. My child, your soulmate's mother had been observing much more than anyone realized. For a long time she had remained silent. She listened. She watched. She paid attention to details others overlooked. The way your soulmate's energy changed when your name appeared. The way their voice softened. The way certain conversations seemed to circle back to you. The way hope returned when they thought about the future. Even when nobody else noticed, she noticed. Even when your soulmate tried to hide their feelings, she saw through them. A mother's intuition is often stronger than words. And deep inside her heart, questions had begun to grow. Questions she could no longer ignore. Who are you really? Why does your presence affect them so deeply? Why does your memory remain when so many others have faded? Why does your name continue returning like a song that refuses to end? These questions stayed with her. Day after day. Week after week. And while you were living your life, unaware of what was happening, she was quietly seeking answers. Not because she wanted to interfere. Not because she wanted control. But because she loved her child. And love always seeks understanding. One evening she found herself sitting alone. The house was unusually quiet. Outside, the world carried on as normal. Cars passed. Lights flickered in distant windows. The night stretched across the sky. Yet inside her mind, something kept returning. You. Again and again. Your name. Your energy. Your influence. There was something she could not explain. Something she could feel but not fully understand. And that was the moment everything began to change. My beloved child, there are moments when heaven moves through ordinary circumstances. No thunder. No lightning. No dramatic signs. Just a subtle shift inside a human heart. A realization. A knowing. A truth that suddenly becomes impossible to ignore. That night she experienced one of those moments. The more she reflected, the more pieces began fitting together. Memories surfaced. Conversations returned. Expressions she had witnessed suddenly made sense. Small details she had dismissed became important. And as the picture grew clearer, her heart became unsettled. Because she realized something. Your soulmate was carrying feelings far deeper than anyone had understood. Far deeper than they themselves had admitted. And that realization stayed with her for days. She could not shake it. No matter how busy life became. No matter how many distractions appeared. The thought remained. Something important was unfolding. Something real. Something that deserved attention. Meanwhile, your soulmate continued carrying emotions they rarely discussed. They smiled when necessary. They handled responsibilities. They moved through daily life. But beneath the surface, another story existed. A story few people knew. A story filled with longing. Questions. Hope. Fear. And you. Always you. Because some connections leave fingerprints on the soul. They cannot be erased. They cannot be replaced. And they certainly cannot be forgotten. My child, there are people who enter our lives for a season. And there are people who enter our lives and alter our entire emotional landscape. You became part of that second category. Whether you realize it or not. Whether they admitted it or not. The impact was undeniable. And their mother had finally begun to see it. But understanding something and accepting it are two very different things. That is where the real struggle began. Because once she recognized the depth of these emotions, she faced a choice. A choice she never expected to confront. A choice that would eventually lead to the important decision this message is about. Yet before that decision could happen, something else needed to occur. A conversation. One she had been postponing. One she had been avoiding. One that would reveal far more than anyone anticipated. When the opportunity finally arrived, she approached carefully. Not with judgment. Not with accusations. But with genuine curiosity. At first the discussion seemed ordinary. Simple questions. Simple answers. Nothing unusual. Yet beneath the surface, emotions were gathering. The deeper she asked, the more the truth emerged. And then it happened. A pause. A silence. A moment where words became difficult. She noticed it immediately. Because sometimes silence says more than speech. Sometimes a hesitation reveals everything. And in that hesitation she found confirmation. The feelings were real. Very real. Far stronger than anyone knew. My beloved child, there are moments when the heart accidentally tells the truth. No rehearsed speech. No prepared explanation. Just raw honesty escaping through cracks in emotional defenses. That night was filled with those moments. The walls began falling. The masks became heavier to wear. The distance between truth and confession grew smaller. And suddenly she understood. This was not a passing attachment. This was not temporary fascination. This was not something that would disappear with time. This mattered. You mattered. Far more than she had realized. The discovery stirred something inside her. Not fear. Not anger. Something more complicated. Reflection. Because she began thinking about the future. About possibilities. About roads not yet traveled. About what happiness truly looks like. And that is when an unexpected transformation started taking place inside her own heart. The assumptions she once held began changing. The concerns she once carried began softening. The resistance she once felt started dissolving. Little by little. Piece by piece. Without anyone noticing. My child, heaven often works this way. Not through sudden explosions, but through gradual awakenings. A heart softens. A perspective shifts. An opinion evolves. And before someone realizes it, they have become a different version of themselves. That process was happening. And it was happening because truth has power. Real feelings have power. Authentic connection has power. Days passed. Then more days. Yet the thoughts remained. Everywhere she went, reflections followed. Every time she observed her child, she saw evidence. Every time she looked toward the future, questions emerged. Every time your name entered her awareness, something moved within her. A quiet understanding. An undeniable recognition. A growing certainty. But certainty can be frightening. Because certainty demands decisions. And decisions create consequences. That reality weighed heavily upon her. She knew she could not remain neutral forever. Sooner or later she would need to decide what role she wanted to play in this unfolding story. Would she support? Would she oppose? Would she remain distant? Would she step forward? These questions followed her everywhere. Morning. Afternoon. Night. Again and again. The pressure grew. The significance became impossible to ignore. Then something happened that accelerated everything. An event. A moment. A revelation. One small occurrence that changed the entire emotional landscape. It arrived unexpectedly. As life-changing moments often do. No warning. No preparation. Just a sudden realization that struck directly at the heart. And when it happened, she understood something profound. Your soulmate was not merely interested in you. They were emotionally invested in a way that could shape the rest of their life. That realization landed heavily. Because now the stakes felt real. Now the future felt real. Now the possibility felt real. And for the first time, she stopped viewing you as a distant figure. She began viewing you as someone who might actually become part of the family's future story. My beloved child, there are moments when people stop asking whether something could happen and begin asking what happens if it does. That shift changes everything. And she had reached that shift. The questions became deeper. The emotions became stronger. The reflections became more serious. She began imagining possibilities she had never allowed herself to consider before. Possibilities involving you. Possibilities involving her child. Possibilities involving a future that suddenly felt closer than ever. But still, one final obstacle remained. One final uncertainty. One final piece of information she needed before making her choice. Without it, she could not move forward. Without it, she could not fully commit to a direction. Without it, the decision would remain incomplete. So she waited. Watched. Listened. And prayed in her own way for clarity. Because clarity was coming. And when it arrived with undeniable force. The answer she had been seeking appeared. Not dramatically. Not loudly. But clearly. Painfully clearly. The missing piece finally revealed itself. And the moment she understood it, everything changed. Every doubt. Every concern. Every lingering question. Suddenly they looked different. The entire situation looked different. The future looked different. You looked different. And in that life-altering realization, she reached a conclusion. A conclusion she never expected to reach when this journey began. A conclusion that would soon become an important decision. A decision capable of influencing far more than anyone realizes. But my child. Before that decision could be spoken aloud. Before it could be shared. Before anyone else could know what she had chosen. Something unexpected happened. A message arrived. A conversation unfolded. And what was revealed in those moments threatened to change everything once again. Because hidden beneath the surface was a truth nobody had prepared for. A truth connected to you. A truth connected to your soulmate. A truth connected to a future neither of them saw coming. And when your soulmate's mother finally heard it, she froze. Not from fear. Not from anger. But from shock. Because the truth she had just discovered made her important decision even more significant than she ever imagined. And what she chose next is something I will reveal in part 2. The silence that followed felt heavier than words. For several moments, nobody spoke. The truth that had just been revealed lingered in the air, refusing to disappear. Your soulmate's mother sat there replaying every detail in her mind. Every conversation. Every observation. Every feeling she had ignored. Every sign she had almost overlooked. And suddenly a realization settled into her heart with a force she could not deny. The story was much bigger than she had originally believed. What she had first considered a simple emotional attachment was revealing itself as something far deeper. Something rooted in genuine care. Something that had survived time. Something that had remained alive even during moments when logic suggested it should have faded. She understood now why your name continued returning. She understood why certain memories remained untouched. She understood why her child seemed different whenever thoughts of you appeared. The pieces finally connected. Yet what surprised her most was not the depth of those emotions. It was their consistency. Because temporary feelings come and go. Infatuation burns brightly and then disappears. But what she was witnessing had endured. Despite challenges. Despite uncertainty. Despite circumstances that could have easily pulled everything apart. The connection remained. And that reality spoke louder than any explanation. Days passed after that revelation. Yet instead of becoming less certain, she became more certain. Every new observation confirmed what her heart had already begun accepting. Your soulmate tried to focus on everyday responsibilities. They continued moving through life. They continued pretending certain emotions were under control. But a mother notices things others miss. She noticed the quiet moments. The distant expressions. The sudden smiles that appeared for no obvious reason. The way hope seemed to return whenever thoughts of the future surfaced. And slowly, something unexpected happened inside her. The concerns that once occupied her mind began losing their power. Questions that once felt important suddenly seemed smaller. Doubts that once appeared significant started fading. In their place grew something else. Understanding. Not perfect understanding. But enough. Enough to see what truly mattered. Enough to recognize sincerity. Enough to recognize authenticity. My child, there are moments when heaven softens hearts without announcing it. No dramatic signs. No visible miracles. Just a gradual transformation that changes the way someone sees another person. That transformation was taking place. And it was taking place because truth has a way of reaching places arguments never can. One evening she found herself sitting quietly, reflecting on everything she had learned. The room was calm. The outside world carried on as usual. But inside her thoughts, a decision was forming. Not impulsively. Not emotionally. Carefully. Thoughtfully. Deliberately. Because she understood that certain choices create ripples that extend far beyond a single moment. She wanted to be certain. She wanted to be fair. She wanted to see clearly. And the more she reflected, the clearer things became. Your name no longer felt like a question. It felt like part of an answer. That realization surprised even her. Because there had been a time when she imagined a completely different future. A different path. A different story. A different outcome. Yet life has a way of rewriting expectations. And sometimes the future arrives wearing a face we never anticipated. My child, while all this was unfolding, your soulmate remained unaware of how much had changed. They still carried worries. They still carried fears. They still wondered whether circumstances would ever align. They still questioned whether certain doors could truly open. What they did not know was that behind the scenes, perspectives were shifting. And those shifts mattered more than they realized. Because support often begins long before it is spoken. Acceptance often begins long before it is visible. A decision often forms long before it is announced. That was exactly what was happening. The important decision had already begun taking shape. Even if nobody else knew it yet. Then came a conversation that would confirm everything. A conversation she never planned to have. A conversation that emerged naturally. And during that discussion, something happened that touched her deeply. Your soulmate spoke about the future. Not in grand declarations. Not in dramatic speeches. But in small, honest reflections. And woven through those reflections was a truth impossible to miss. You mattered. Not as a passing chapter. Not as a temporary thought. But as someone connected to their vision of happiness. That truth reached her heart. Because every parent hopes their child will eventually discover something genuine. Something meaningful. Something worth protecting. And for the first time, she began wondering whether that was exactly what had happened. The possibility grew stronger. The certainty grew stronger. And with every passing day, her decision became clearer. Yet there was still one final moment. One final turning point. One final experience that transformed a private conclusion into a firm choice. It happened unexpectedly. As many important moments do. She witnessed something simple. Something ordinary. Something most people would overlook. But what she observed carried extraordinary meaning. She saw the difference between existing and truly living. She saw the difference between routine and inspiration. She saw the difference between surviving and hoping. And in that moment she understood how deeply your presence had impacted her child. Not through control. Not through pressure. Not through obligation. But through genuine emotional significance. That realization changed everything. Because when love is authentic, it leaves evidence. Not perfect evidence. Not dramatic evidence. But real evidence. Evidence found in growth. Evidence found in healing. Evidence found in hope. Evidence found in the way someone's eyes light up when they speak about the future. She saw that evidence. And once she saw it, she could no longer ignore it. The decision became unavoidable. My child, this is the moment heaven has been leading you toward throughout this story. The moment when uncertainty gives way to clarity. The moment when observation becomes conviction. The moment when hesitation becomes choice. After all the reflection. After all the questioning. After all the silent consideration. Your soulmate's mother finally made her important decision. In the privacy of her own heart, she chose not to stand against what she had come to understand. She chose not to dismiss what she had witnessed. She chose not to reject what appeared genuine. Instead, she made a different choice. A quieter choice. A wiser choice. She decided to leave room for possibility. She decided to stop resisting what she could clearly see. She decided that if happiness was truly waiting along this path, she did not want to become the obstacle standing in front of it. That decision brought peace to her heart. Not because every question disappeared. Not because every uncertainty vanished. But because she finally stopped fighting what felt increasingly real. And once that happened, another transformation began. The atmosphere shifted. The emotional weight lessened. The future no longer felt like something to fear. It began feeling like something worth exploring. My beloved child, many people spend their lives waiting for circumstances to change while never realizing that hearts are changing first. The visible breakthrough often arrives after the invisible breakthrough. The spoken support often arrives after the silent acceptance. The open door often appears after unseen locks have already been removed. That is why not everything important happens where you can see it. Some of the most significant developments occur behind the scenes. Inside thoughts. Inside prayers. Inside hearts. And while you were focused on your own questions, important changes were quietly unfolding elsewhere. Changes that may one day reveal their impact in ways you never expected. Tonight's message is not a promise of a specific outcome. It is a story of understanding. A story of perspective. A story about how people can evolve when truth reaches them. Because hearts are not as fixed as they sometimes appear. Opinions change. Perceptions change. People change. And sometimes those changes happen precisely when nobody expects them. So if you have been feeling discouraged, if you have been feeling unseen, if you have been wondering whether hidden progress is possible, remember this story. Remember that not every victory announces itself immediately. Remember that not every positive development arrives with noise. Remember that some of the most important decisions are made quietly long before they become visible. And somewhere beyond what your eyes can currently see, new chapters are already preparing themselves. The story is still unfolding. The pages are still turning. And what comes next has not yet fully revealed itself. Because every meaningful journey contains moments that nobody can predict. Moments that arrive unexpectedly. Moments that transform everything. And perhaps, just perhaps, one of those moments is closer than anyone realizes.